Well, start of a brand new week. It's Monday. Oh my, what a week it was past week. I thought maybe a good subject to talk about is what it was like back in my early times. I was born in the 40s, and the 50s and 60s are the growing years, and to include the military time as well. I was born during World War II, and times were kind of tough there when I was young. But the parents kind of took that worry on, and kids played baseball, softball, basketball, any games they could invent, whether it be checkers, chess, all kinds of different card games, including poker. And most of the time was spent, of course, everybody loved the summer. School was okay, but nothing like the summer. And fishing, and for me, I loved the woods, the country, the farm life. I just couldn't get enough of the outdoors when I was a kid. And I guess it's because the house was so small. You get awful stuffy. There were 6 of us all together, counting my grandmother, and it was my grandmother's house. And that house was less than 400 square feet. So, we rubbed shoulders a lot in that house. But it was a atmosphere that was, as far as I was concerned, it was a loving atmosphere. I have good memories of most of the things around there and our neighbors. And like any time, of course, you're always going to get a stinker or two for neighbors. It just happens. And back then, we just lived with it. Most of the time, you could get a neighbor to comply with sociability of the block. It doesn't take long. You all work together and make it happen. That's just the way it was. Everybody spent a lot of time out on their front porch socializing with anybody that walked by. Now, we lived on the very edge of town, so you could say there wasn't a whole lot of people come by, but the people around the block there did. So I guess not as much as like uptown, but on the edge of town, I guess there's enough traffic to keep everybody socialized, and you knew what was going on from one side to the other side. To include the country. You knew what was going on around the area in the country too. But it was happy. People were happy. They had a lot less then than they do today. And they had to work a lot harder. And they were happier. Now, why is that? And I've never figured it out, tell you the truth. I don't know if it's the way they were brought up. Everybody back then would confess to being a church member somewhere in town. And there was a lot more churches than there were taverns, although there was taverns on most corners. But the churches were spread out all through the area. And it was time for socializing at whatever church you went with, or two. And then the other socializing point was the town square, which wasn't real big, but Saturday nights were farm nights where all the farmers would come in and shop, and very seldom people work weekends, and Sundays they didn't sell anything on Sundays. Sunday was a day off for everybody. There was laws where you couldn't open up a retail shop, matter of fact, in that state. And so Saturdays were bustling. And the place to be was uptown, listen to the band, go to the popcorn stand, just meet people you haven't met all week. You're always happy to see everybody. It was a fine time. Not like it is today. Not like it is today. I know you see me get wrapped up in these little squabbles, and it's hard for me to think of how many changes and what has happened to everybody out there. But I can tell you, my grandmother was the sweetest person. Well, I had two of them now. They're both the sweetest people you ever wanted to meet. And then I had an aunt lived right across the alley from me, and my great-grandfather lived there when I first was there. Matter of fact, he retired shortly after we moved in with my grandmother. And he was pretty quiet, but my aunt that lived over there, she was nice like my grandmother was. And she was one of those people that always had fresh cookies to eat. And by the way, all the older people that lived within a few blocks there loved kids. I don't know of anybody there that didn't call kids, invite them for cocoa, cookies, fresh fruits, in the summertime. It was, it really was different than it is today. Kids respected the older generation, and I know we were taught that from the time we could understand the spoken language, and I guess we all, we loved the stories. Back then, as far as I know, within a 2-block area, I only seen one TV back in the late 40s or early 50s. One TV, it was a small one. It looked like about a 6 to 8 inch screen maybe. And it was kind of rounded on the edges, a kind of oval shaped screen, and had big lines in it. It wasn't as plain as looking at TVs today. And so it was a treat when I was asked to come over. I could come over and watch it if I felt like it. The people there were, like a lot of people, they they liked you, they invited you in, and you could sit around and converse with anybody. That included if you were a 5-year-old kid and the person you were talking to were, say, 75, 80 years old. There was common ground. I know it's hard to believe, but there was back then. My grandmother, she was what today you would consider a mathematician. She was extremely good with numbers, and she could play any game. And you didn't want to play cards with her. She was really sharp. And but it didn't matter what game you played with her. You could play Monopoly, and if she felt like it, she would beat your pants off in the game. She was she'd get this sparkle in her eye. Now, I know for a fact she let us win once in a while because my mom got after her for cheating a few times. Because she didn't want my grandmother to just let us kids win. But my grandmother felt that we had to win once in a while, I guess, because she was happier if one of us would win a game than if she won one. If you can believe that or not, that's the way it was. And everybody, it seemed like when they'd come over, didn't matter who it was, relatives or friends, they always seemed to have some fresh food with them. If they had a garden, they'd bring something over and say, hey, we had an abundance of whatever it was, and they'd drop a sack off. You didn't have a lot of, we didn't have anything like this to converse on, so it was either, a telephone or a letter. So there was more spontaneous of people just stopping in, saying, hey, we've seen your lights on, thought we'd stop for a chat. And here'd come a sack or a bowl or something with, food was the, kind of like you came in with food in one hand and a handshake in the other. I mean, that was how we did greetings back then. Even when I got out of the service, I can remember the one grandmother, she had dropped by our apartment. This is when, that first year I was back, but she always had something. And when I got out of service, at that time I really didn't drink. She brought me over a case of Drewry's, the little bottles. And my grandmother liked to have a beer once in a while. That particular one is my dad's mother. And so she said, she brought in this case, and she said, well, are you going to have one? I said, yeah, Grandma. So we sat down and had a beer. She always had a glass of wine every night before she went to bed as well. So she's quite a gal. I can't tell you how much we all loved her. And my wife told her one day, she said, we really don't drink a lot. She said, you don't have to bring beer in if you don't want to. But she just figured since I'd spent 3 years in the Army that I'd probably be drinking. I drank plenty later on in my life there. But when I got out, I really didn't have the money for it. By the time I got out, we had one child and another one on the way, and money was tight. Back then, when you got out, people didn't really, they didn't appreciate veterans. And so you were kind of last on the list for hiring, and it was just different, unfortunately. But you work around it. It's what you do. And I was better off in the military. I should have stayed in a while longer. We actually had it better when I was in the service than after I got out. The wages weren't that great. And the first job I had when I got out lasted maybe 4 months. And then it came layoff time, and I was off for, I think 4 or 5 months. They called me back, but by then I'd already gotten another job and told them I didn't want to work for them. And it wasn't a very good paying job anyway. The only good thing about it was 4 blocks from my apartment. So you take what you can get. But yeah, let's go back to when I was young, though. When I first moved in with my grandmother there wasn't a lot of young kids in the area. And up on the street corner, there was 2 boys that were probably like 12 and 14 years old, something like that. And their sister was my age. So there was a girl there. And kitty corner across, there was a girl there that was my age. And then there was a younger one that was about, well, my brother hadn't been born yet, but they were born about the same time, a couple years after I moved in with my grandmother. Well, about the time, I guess. That's a lot of years ago. And then a block and a half away, there was a kid that was a year older than I was, but a lot bigger. Man, he was a good head taller than I was, and just big. And then the neighbor kid was, I think he was around maybe 14 or 15. He lived right next door. So, and him and I didn't really have anything in common. We talked back and forth. Of course, I was just a little kid. This is even before I started school, by the way, when I moved there. But we learned pretty quick the soft touches around there. And the more gray hair, the softer the touch. So my grandmother introduced me to all I call them the old gals in the perimeter around there. And she, just about daily or every other day, she would make the visit around, and if she didn't go around, 1 or 2 of them might stop by the house. And since I was young and always pretty much somewhere around, I get to meet these people. And anytime I walked past the house, no matter what I was doing or going somewhere, there was always a hi and how you doing and how's your grandma and that kind of stuff. And even when I'd go uptown later on, when I was a little older, a couple years older than that, people would stop me on the sidewalk, want to know how my grandma was doing. And it seemed like everybody knew her. It was a small town, farm community. My grandmother had been born and raised just a little over a quarter mile from where I grew up there in that town. Right straight down the road. You could see my great-grandfather's farm from the front door. Well, you had to walk out to the edge of the yard, but you could see where his farm was. And the heck of it is, it was a nice road out there. Everything else around us was, at the time, was mud. It wasn't even gravel, just mud road. I don't remember how old I was when they put a hard surface on one of them. Trying to think. I can't remember how old I was. I know we liked to play softball up there on that road up there. The older kids would get together and even though I was pretty small, they always let me play. I guess they took pity on me. But when I got older, obviously, I loved softball and hardball both, baseball. I played it every summer. And I guess back then, without TV, and you didn't listen to the radio a whole lot either. The games meant a lot. And, like I say, the older people had the stories, and so they were the entertainment for young people. Today, the entertainment is this thing right here. And I can remember when TV finally started really catching on, that kind of became the entertainer in the homes, mainly in the evenings, not so much in the daytime or even weekends. It wasn't as entertaining. It seemed like weekends were always packed full of stuff that you did, especially, the adults did everything on the weekend because they worked all week, and then Saturday was shopping day and Sunday was rest or church. Seemed like if it was the fall of the year, we'd be hunting. Most of the rest of the year, we'd go fishing at different places. Creek was just 75 yards maybe, I don't know. It wasn't very far from our front door. Just down I'd go. I had some homemade bank poles I kept hid down there. And you could lift any rock and get something to use for bait. Or you could take a small shovel with you, and the worms were everywhere. I mean, you could get plenty of fish and worms. There was no problem fishing, and you always got fish. Back then, there was plenty of them. A lot of different, I think, in the aspect that nothing was overhunted or overfished. Maybe it's just less people, or maybe people weren't as greedy. They took only what they needed to eat. They didn't, I don't know. Like I say, things change over the years, at least from my opinion. Now, when I look at some of the things out there, I know every once in a while somebody will make a comment about, Ray, you change your mind about different people when you're talking about them. And some of these people I've been talking about for 8, 9, 10 months, whatever it is. And most of the people said, well, Ray, you don't know enough about him. You need to investigate and look back and see all the things they do. And when I did that, what I found out was those two neighbors that are the stars of the tube in Otter Creek there. There's neither one of them, and I know I told you this the other day, that I'd like to be a neighbor with. I don't care for either one of them. They both have their problems. One is more of the mental issues, and maybe both, I don't know. But as time went on, I found out I had a distaste for both. Because they're not the type of people you'd invite home in real terms for supper. One can be initially seems somewhat charismatic, okay? But after a while, the loud mouth and the attention, the one wants attention all the time, seems. And now this is an observation only. The neighbor seems more to be just kind of have some mental issues and kind of nasty, both foul mouth and mode of living. Now, the way people live on their own property, that's their business. So I try not to judge those types that have things in disarray. I know what it was like to live in a small home and not have anything. We had no running water, and the only electricity we had was from 3 cords hanging down in the 3 rooms of that house. That's a house that 6 of us lived in. 4 of us slept in one of the bedrooms. My 2 brothers slept in the bottom bunk till I went into service when I was 17. I slept in the top bunk. Across the room, which, if you were in the bottom bunk, you could reach the bed on the other side with your hand. That wasn't a bunk, it was a twin bed over there. That was my grandma's. My parents were in another room on the other side of that wall right over here. And to me, it looked like a huge room, but it wasn't. But being a little kid, to me, it was big, especially when you get cooped up in that other room that wasn't as big as most closets. And what was called the kitchen and living room was one room, the full length of the house, and about 10 foot wide, if that. And in there was a dry sink, because that's where we washed the dishes. And there was a bucket underneath the sink, the water would go in. There was a kerosene tabletop stove with 2 burners in it. There was a tin box in there that we used for an oven. Back then, it was considered an oven, and it was made out of tin. It had a little thermostat up there that you looked at, a little temperature gauge. Not a thermostat, but a temperature gauge. And when I first moved in there, we had an ice box, a real ice box. The iceman would deliver ice to us, about 12 by 12 inches or 12 by 16, something like that. And he had these big old ice hook. He'd take it out of his truck and bring it up there, and he would actually put it in our ice box. And those things, they kept things cool, but that's all. You weren't going to put fresh things in there and keep them fresh very long, because the temperature in there, it just wasn't that cold. Now, granted, like water coming out of our pump was around 56 degrees, I believe. And if you chopped off a little piece of ice and put it in your glass, it was that much colder. Now, the 56 degrees was cold on a summer day. That felt good. Well, boy, you put a little drop of ice in there, that was heaven. You appreciate a lot of small things when things are that way. But let's go back to, looking back at this scenario where people said, well, Ray, you make up your mind one way and then you change it. And I thought, yeah, that's true. The same people were probably the ones that tell me, hey, you got to look at them a little better, but you got to see what's going on. Well, one of them, I looked at it and I could see that their mode of operations hadn't changed a whole lot. Their history was a pre-look at what was going on there in Otter Creek. The mannerisms, the hyper accusation, confrontation attitudes were there. The other one was the type of people that I don't think wherever they moved, I don't think they were very good friends with the neighbors. So I could see no matter where they go, they were going to aggravate whoever was next door. They were the type that they weren't smart enough not to impose on people. They probably had their hand out all the time, and they probably always had a foul mouth. I was surprised when I found out that their neighbor had a foul mouth too, extremely foul. He'd have been eating a lot of soap if he'd have grew up with me. And you didn't even have to swear to end up with some soap in your mouth. It was a matter of attitude and how you talk during that attitude. I could get you a bar of soap in there. Or maybe a will switch on the behind. Maybe that's what he needs. Or needed back when he was young. You can't change an older person very easily. What they are is what they are. And I've been accused, he said, well, Christians don't judge. And I thought, well, wait a minute now. They do judge. More so than most people would think. You have to be careful how you judge. But if you don't use your noggin a little bit, people run over the top of you or they take advantage of you. There's a lot of things people can do to you. So you have to use your judgment to understand what you're dealing with. So when you get mad at me because well, let's put it this way. I'm not saying you're mad at me, but you give me this advice saying, I need to look further into it. This person was so good. No. No, they're not. They're not that good. I did look at the background, and I see how they're acting today. And the suspicions I had back then, and I didn't voice them too much, but when I did, it wasn't appreciated at all. But I said, either this person has a split personality or they're bipolar or something, but they're not right. And I was on their side because the neighbor over there was foul-mouthed and the kind you don't want to be around. And it seemed like it was a back-and-forth thing, but back then, in the very beginning, it was two neighbors feuding. And it changed into a town thing. It spread. It was like a disease. And there come this name afterwards, later on. A descriptive name of the person that was probably spreading the disease. Because more and more people got involved, including myself, and I don't live there. I picked it up off the internet. I started making my own judgmental calls. And for the most part, I think I was right, because I had said, I think this is what's wrong with that person. But I sat back and, let things flow. And as time went on, I found out more and more and more what it was. And then it got to the point where the whole town is turned upside down. Now, do I think that things are better there in that town? Well, I think that the running of the town is. But when you ask about whether it's better or not for the whole town, remember, you're talking about a town of 100 people. And they all had their little differences and problems. Now they have a different set. And some of it could get quite dangerous. And you've seen how it played out. And there's, threats and all kinds of stuff going on. I don't know how they worked things out before these two outsiders came there and became neighbors. The only thing I know is now, everybody's on one side or the other. And they get mad if you're on, no matter what side you're on, they're mad at you. If you're in the middle, you're not allowed to express your opinion. It's kind of silly. It's kind of like, you're neither hot nor cold. You're lukewarm, I spew thee from my mouth. Think about that a little bit. And what that's telling you is that, in real terms, if you're riding the fence, you may not be somebody that the Lord likes that well, because I think the Lord expects you to be on the right side of goodness and fairness. And so you try to do that as much as you can. And the judgments that you make are based on the history of the person you're dealing with, how they are today, and what you think they're going to be tomorrow. And it changes as you find out more, and as there's more interaction. And then the day comes where you have to just walk away from it. You have to dismiss yourself from the whole thing in some way or another. And in most cases, it's called kicking the can down the road. Let somebody else deal with it. You're done with it. Goodbye, adios. This person's happy because you're not making a decision. That person's happy because you're not making a decision. You can't ride the fence. I'm just telling you, you can't. And anybody that can't change their mind will never be able to sit down and negotiate a deal. You have to understand both sides of the coin to make the decision when you flip it, which side you're going to choose. Because that's what it is, a coin toss. You don't know really which side it's going to be, if it's going to flip up. You know, a coin has equal sides. But how it's going to fall is just a matter of odds. People, at least when you're looking at them, you can make that decision, whether you like them or don't like them. And it can be changed. Believe me, there's people I thought was my worst enemy ended up being my best friend later on in life. When you get closer to the end, like I am, a lot of those people are gone. They're just... And in today's world, it's hard to think about putting somebody or bringing somebody back into your life. You know, you can't replace friends that have been there for your whole life. You can't. It don't work. But you can appreciate a good neighbor if they're there. And if you're a good neighbor, maybe they appreciate you too. Now, quite honestly, I've tried to be a good neighbor when I got involved with looking at the things over there in Otter Creek. And no matter which way or what you say, you'll never meet the criteria that's asked of you when you live in a small town like that, because at this point, because there's a division, the division is, are you for or against me? And both sides tell you the same thing. So if you're outside looking in, no, you're not going to be a part of it. You won't be part of that town. I don't think things are going to change a whole lot right now. I can see where the people that are running the town, now in my estimation, I think they're better qualified than the people that were there. And only time will tell if it's going to be good for the town. The one thing they're missing is finances. And, you know, there's been a few mistakes already, I think, in spending money. Because it's just, with 100 people, they just don't have it. They're lucky they even have a water supply. If emergency came along, I don't know what they would do unless the state stepped in and the federal government to help them out with forgivable loans. It's that dire in small towns out in the boonies, and you certainly are out in the boonies there. Myself, I like areas like that, mainly because I like things, wildlife, woods, even the swamps. When I lived in Louisiana, I mean, we spent a lot of time fishing and, you know, out in the actual swamps. We were out there. I mean, I knew the area real well. I loved the life down there. I loved it in Texas, but we didn't live in a swamp. We lived in the northwest side of Houston there. And that's anything but swamp. It's all brand new. Well, back then it was all brand new there. And it was a big change to make. We traveled a lot too. I mean, you talk about big changes in your life when you go to a little 3-room house to living the lifestyle my wife and I did by the time we were in our 40s was something. It was a big change for both of us. But we still loved some of the small town life and the people that came with it. And I don't know how Otter Creek reacted with each other. Only the people that lived there all their life were able to explain their life itself. I haven't seen anybody come on here and say, well, I loved it. I lived here. I loved it. I grew up. My grandparents lived here. I haven't seen people talk about their family life. Now, I've seen the outsiders that came in, and they have their life on out here on the YouTube. Both of them do. And it's not a good life. So I don't know if they're trying to change Otter Creek into that style of life, because it's in turmoil. And I have no idea what kind of turmoil was going on there before it was invaded. But I do know that two have changed that town. The fighting of two families. And there's nothing I can do about it. I know I get beat up on it when I give my opinion about how I feel about it. I've never seen so much hate generated by people that don't even live in the area. And why is there so much in one thing? Now, a lot of the people that have followed my channel on a regular basis, most of the ones that are really subbed to my channel are nice. They don't swear on here. They just offer an opinion, even though it's different than mine, but they don't beat it, and they don't beat up on me. There's a different way of expressing your opinion without trying to tear somebody else's opinion down. But on this other entity, there's so much hate in their heart that when they come in to have a disagreement, they're not satisfied with the disagreement themselves. They want to make comments about you that are hurtful comments. They have no idea what you're like or who you are. They just want to do all these disparaging remarks. And I don't know where that comes from. I only know that the people that have been here consistently on my tube have been nice. They are the people that want to make you feel good. Why is there so much difference between the people from one tube land to the other tube land? Can you tell me why it is? I mean, I don't chase you down and call you names, but you like to chase me down and call me names. I don't know why. And I'm talking about the people that come in here, they're very happy to listen to a few words or an opinion and express an opinion in a nice way. There's a nice way you can express an opinion. And there's a wrong way. And you all know what I'm talking about. I don't like the way some people conduct their personal life when they try to impose it on somebody else. That's not your job. The Lord don't ask you to do it that way either. So for you haters out there, now I'm not sure why you do that so bad, and why it is so much on somebody else's channel when you come to my channel and use that on me. There's no reason to. I don't hate you. I may not like you, but that's not a reason to hate me. I'm just telling you. I may not like the way you do things, but I'll try to understand it. But if you're a slob, you're a slob. And I'm not calling you a slob. Don't put the words in my mouth. I'm just saying, you are whatever you are. I'm amazed at how many people will go. It's almost like a hornet's nest that's been shook, and it goes out and it stings everything that moves. Or just like these wild bees, the Africanized bees that we have in the southern United States, if you shake their nest, they'll chase you down until they've you can't move anymore, or till you find a place where you can hide and get them off from you. That's what it feels like when you have all these haters come in. And that's, there's other people out there that have channels similar to mine. And you people have went after them and tried to make their life miserable because of their opinions. Because they don't agree with the things you do. This name calling and this hate attitude. If you think that's Christian, no, it's not. And I don't want people coming to me and start preaching to me about different verses that they've made up. Half of them I've never read the verse before, or verse after. I'm amazed at how many people cherry pick the Bible and use that for their own means. That's not what the Lord wants you to do. But listen, you do what you want, but just take it somewhere else. Don't bring it here and try to hate me. I'm too old. I've seen too many things. There's no room in my heart for a hater, and I don't hate you. Like I said, and I never will hate you. I'll be disappointed in you. You know, the one thing that when I was young is my grandmother didn't have to tell me twice to do something. I loved her so much that I didn't want to do something wrong because I didn't want her to think that I would do something like that around her. I loved her. And people should feel that way about each other. You don't want to really disappoint them, so you want to be on your best behavior if you can. And that means no name calling, no BS. I'm not talking about nicknames now. Yeah. You know, when I was young, my nickname was Pudgy. And later on, and I've had different nicknames over the years. I was only Pudgy till I was about 4 or 5 years old, and I run the fat off because I was so active. And when I got older, of course, I got heavy again, but that's, past 40. My name that I use on here, that was a nickname. It was given to me a long time ago. No big deal. It has no real meaning. It's just a nickname. That's all it is. So there's nothing wrong with nicknames. But if you do it in a negative or derogatory way, that is bad. Now, I know some of you call Thomas out there Biscuit Boy. And, he said at different times, he called himself Biscuit. He explained it. He even had a shirt with Biscuit on there. And somebody called out because it was misspelled. You're always trying to hurt his feelings, even though he's trying very hard to fit in. And you guys, some of you guys don't want to let him fit in. And I know he got crossways with your golden-haired boy there. And yet, this is a young man that's trying his heart out. And you don't want to give him a chance. That's not nice. That's not what the Lord would want. Now, I'm not calling him Biscuit. To myself, I know that you guys do it to be negative and derogatory. So his Christian name is Thomas. And as far as I'm concerned, that's what I'm going to call him, is Thomas. If he wants to be called Tommy or Tom or something like that, that's what I'll call him. Whatever he wishes to be called. That doesn't have to be, maybe he's got a nickname that he has his friends address him, whatever it is. And that's only an example, okay? And I know a half a dozen of you are going to come in here and give me this rhetoric about Thomas. That is your opinion and not mine. And I'm not looking to change mine real quick. I understood, at the very beginning what you were doing to this poor kid. Well, he's no kid. To me, he's a kid, but he's a young man. And I know you're after different people out there that the spotlight has been put on. It's like a bunch of vultures tearing something apart. That's not nice either. So you got to find something in your heart for a reason maybe to change your methods from tearing something apart to helping it back on its feet in some way. Show them the light. Show them the light of the Lord if you can. You'd be surprised how many people you can turn around if you really try. Now, some of these people on here that have come on, they may not be able to be changed. I don't know. Anyway, this has been a long video, and I doubt if too many went this far because most of you don't like a lecture. And I started out with letting you know about what it was like when I was growing up and how nice I felt about it, and that all works. It was a good time I had back then. My wife and I have a good time here. We do. We're thankful for everything that the Lord has provided us. We're thankful for the friends we've had over the years. And, you know, our heart has a lot of empty spots for the ones that have passed on. And we hope to see them again someday. In our mind we see them, in our heart we see them. We feel them. The Lord has always found a way to fill that empty spot to a certain extent so it don't ache so bad. The other thing is, you know, the Lord gave my wife and I to each other, and here we are. We're both, well, I am 80. My wife will be 80 pretty soon. We've known each other since we were teenagers and married when we were teenagers. I would do it all over again. I think my wife would too. At least I hope so. You know, through thick or thin, we got here. And we didn't do that by hating people. Hating will bring you down. Oh, for you that stayed this long, put down there, have you found somebody that you're willing to spend the rest of your life with? Have you found a way to get rid of the hate in your heart and put love in there instead? Have I made any difference at all talking to you a little bit? Yes, I change my mind from time to time because when I look at somebody and I find out more and more about them, it may change how I feel. Like I say, there's two out there that have been fighting. I'm not fond of either one of them. And you guys want me to make a decision of whose side I'd be on. I've talked good and bad about one of them. The other one I've never talked good about. I've just tried not to talk about them at all, other than wishing there was some kind of help for that persons. I feel bad for them, the fact that on a daily basis, the hate that's spewed in their direction is unconscionable. I don't know how many people could take that much and still walk. Sometimes you have to walk in somebody else's shoes with your imagination and see if you could hold up to that amount of hate. When there's people like that need help, well, all that's going to do is bring tears to my eyes because there again, my idea is to fix something before it breaks down if you can. I know we're in a society, a throwaway society, but we don't need to throw away people. We don't. The videos I've seen of how people are interacting, that's enough to break your heart, makes you upset your stomach for sure. And I can't imagine those people who stood around the other day at that auction that had their children with them to listen to that evil spewed out of a mouth. And this same person came on the YouTube last night and tried to explain all that away by blaming the other person. The person that they were, well, enough's enough. See if you can find in your heart to use a little love and a little less hate. Get rid of the hate, you'll live a lot longer. If you're going to shed tears, shed them for those that need them. And with that, I'll let you go. Let me know, did you make it to the end? Go ahead and put a story out there. How you got rid of hate and put love in your heart. Thank you.